we'll let you read what you prepared.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom. Today we're going to take a look at a different type of poetry, the poetry of original art. And I think we have certainly all seen the Van Gogh's famous Starry Night painting, one of the most famous works in modern art, a seminal work in Western art. And I have a story here about Van Gogh, who said, he wrote, "A starry sky is something I should like to try to do. Just as in the daytime, I'm going to try to paint a green meadow spangled with dandelions." And he says, just as one takes a train at the time to travel on Earth, we take death to reach a star. And from that, I go a little bit forward into a beautiful, beautiful song, a song called Vincent that Don McLean came out with around 1971.
Yes.
And when no hope was left inside on that starry, starry night, you took your life as lovers often do. But I have told you, Vincent, this world was never meant for one as beautiful as you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
That was very nice, David.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You can join our choir.
I think we can join his.
Yeah. No, it is an interesting deal, and it does dovetail into things. As for those of us that are steeped in the world of science, it's very important to also exercise the other half of your brain to understand and to receive allow yourself to receive the full experience of life, and art in its different forms complements science as science complements art.
One thing I would like to add, Marty, is that if Van Gogh had tried to kill himself in our generation, he probably would not have succeeded, and they would have been able to save him. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because that is what happened when I tried it, when I was a little bit younger than he would have been when he succeeded in that. I tried mine in 1973, and when I came out of it, I decided I wasn't going to try that again, thank God. And I'm still here.
And thank you for not succeeding, because after that, the comment. No, but it's one of the things that this in a way dovetails into our discussions today. Think about Van Gogh and how he looks at things, and compare that in a way to how other people look at the same things. Think of how Moses and Aaron are looking at this situation, and think of the Pharaoh and the courtiers that are thinking, how they are thinking about this situation that everyone finds themselves steeped in.
And Wendy is here, as you can see.
Yes, that's right. Her
She's
UCLA.
a little annoyed with me because I spilled coffee, but she's.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen.
Hey,
Hi, Rabbi. How are you doing?
morning. How's everyone?
Okay, pretty good.
I'm on the little iPad this morning. My regular computer decided that today was going to be Shabbat Machshav, a Sabbath for the computer, and it just says, "I'm updating. See you later." So I have to be on the other, so everyone looks a little different, but it's nice to see you anyway.
The
But
same
doesn't the
here.
computer know that it's not supposed to update on Shabbat?
I don't. Well, I guess not. Maybe
Now, that's an interesting comment, David. Is a computer Jewish? Anyway,
It is Jewish, it's just not kosher.
we could have a nice debate on that.
oh golly. Well, we left off, and correct me if I'm wrong, I always goof up on it. I think we are on Exodus chapter 10, verse 1.
I think so.
Okay,
Believe so.
I see several people nodding, so that's okay then. So who would like to lead the reading? Go ahead, David.
Okay, I can start it. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go in unto Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I might show these my signs in the midst of them, and that thou mayest tell in the ears of my son and of my son's son what I have brought upon Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that ye may know that I am the Lord.
Okay, let's stop at that point. I want to just discuss the phrase "go to Pharaoh," and today's reading. It's Bo. If we were going to be following the usual sequence of everything, this would be the passage Bo, B-O, and so it's saying go to Pharaoh. Are there any discussion about that? Yes, Don.
Well, good morning, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Moses is not among the highest ranked of subjects in Egypt, and for him to get an audience with the Pharaoh would be like, I don't know what's an analogy, someone running the Italian restaurant down the street, knocking on the door of the Pope, expecting to be admitted. I'm not quite sure how he has such easy access.
Okay, that's a good point. I do not understand that myself. If he's, but I think one way of looking at it is that Pharaoh took up this challenge. Who's challenging my authority, and sort of like a game at the expense of the people. Yes, Pastor Bruce.
I was kind of just looking backwards since I have been in and out here. Again, I'm dressed. I will be departing early for a memorial service once again, all month. And it seems as if that every other plague, you're either getting up early in the morning or you're going to Pharaoh. I'm just kind of trying to, if there's a relationship there, I'm not sure. And if you talked about it before, I'm not sure either. So I maybe these goes are later in the day versus getting up early in the morning, because some of these directions are very clear. Get up early in the morning and talk, or go and talk. And so, Rabbi, is there any difference between those things or not?
Well, there might be, but I think actually Marty's original question may have gone over some people's heads. because the Hebrew word bow
Yeah,
actually means come.
Right.
right.
It's enter. It doesn't mean go like we encountered with Abraham of lech lecha, of go
Right.
forth. So what's the reason that this has a different verbiage? You know, is it asking or commanding a different action on Moses's part? Is the context different? Immediately, it's not only come on, approach Pharaoh, but Moses is being told already, even though you're going to go there, God says I've hardened his heart, so you're not going to be successful, but I want you to go anyway. And I think that's kind of what Marty's question was initially. Do we see some kind of a difference between the instruction at this point compared to the other times that Moses and Aaron were asked to be the messengers?
So, thank you. Some of you may remember the poem I read a while back, the play between two words, go and come, and how they go back and forth, and to see what I have in store for you. Okay. However, if you're going to go in this fashion or come to Pharaoh in a way, if it can also imply enter, could this be metaphorical? Appeal to his heart, even though God has hardened it. Give him another fighting chance. Appeal to his heart, because of what unfolds. If I look at it this way, it seems to me to indicate God doesn't intend, he wants Pharaoh to change his way too. Let's put it that way. As opposed to just saying, hey, I'm waiting for him. I want to get rid of him. Okay. And because I'm about to do something. If we think about, what may be going on in the background, what I'm about to do is so horrible. I even dread the thought of having to do it. So please see if you can persuade him. Now let's go back to the rest of this, because it seemed, I just think it's being handled here metaphorically. So David, would you like to, is there anything else I should ask? Is there anything else that anyone wants to discuss?
Yes, there is.
Please, David.
Because it says there are two things. One is that
Yes.
Moses' family has a tradition of being advisors to Pharaoh, going all the way back to Joseph. So that might be part of it. The other thing is the English here says go in unto Pharaoh. Doesn't just say lech lecha.
Right.
It says go in, and the in might be another interpretation. But shall I continue?
No, I think that that's very good. Any further comments on that? Because that's what David said is also very, very important.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mark.
Yes, go ahead, Pastor Bruce.
I was just looking at verse 2 once again about the telling. And of course, that's definitely part of, as you get into Passover, you tell and you retell.
Yes.
And how important that is in Judaism and Christianity to retell the story.
Yes.
In fact, the closing song today I'm doing at this memorial service is a hymn that maybe you don't know, but it's called I Love to Tell the Story. That's the closing song that they picked for this service today.
Interesting.
And I love to tell the story. And so I'm looking at that going, oh my, this is all jumping out at me because I'm just getting ready to go do that. But, you know, when you think about the memory of these acts of God in getting his people to a specific place, the retelling keeps everything alive for every descendant. We would not be discussing this if somebody decided not to do that.
Correct.
Yeah.
We would not be discussing this today had somebody said, no, we're not going to do that anymore.
That's an excellent point. David, would you reread just one thing? In verse 2, would you read from the word, you know, I made a mockery of the Egyptians, but emphasize the pronouns. Okay, as you read from that point on.
I'll try. And that thou mayest tell in the ears of thy son, and of thy son's son, which I have brought upon Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that ye may know that I am the Lord.
Right, because it's a real distinction here. You remember we discussed the plagues, what the intent of the plagues may have been for. And we spoke about how they may have been for the Egyptians, but also the Israelites, and also for Moses and Aaron. It's going to, it's like a huge road sign with a gigantic arrow. Okay, this is the path you must take. And remember from whence the arrow came. Yes, Don.
I'm realizing since last week that that Moses is really being groomed here. I mean, his focus is on Moses. He's being groomed for a leadership role in something that he has no idea about yet. But he has no experience in standing up before the people, and he's only learning now what it's like to stand up to somebody with great terrestrial power. But it's like every step of the way, he's being given confidence by God that just do what I tell you and things are going to work out. And I'm sure he's feeling much trepidation every time he steps forward. So I'm seeing your emphasis on the pronouns. It's thy and I and my. It's really between God and Moses at this point. Anyway, that's fine. I don't know if that's valid, but that's fine.
Okay, very good. Very good. Yes, Gail.
Then there's the mystery man, Aaron. Is he being groomed for something too?
That's a good point. Why do you say that?
The great silent man who doesn't speak. No, I mean, again, I wish somebody would write a book about him because it's just, there's nothing to go on. Nothing. I just like to hear what people think he's going through at this point.
Well, we can only any thoughts on the matter since you brought it up?
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I included him because he's supposed to be the spokesperson, and now he's fallen by the wayside. We could have an interesting discussion on what he may have been thinking doing all of this. Remember, he's supposed to be the firstborn. Yeah, yes, Rabbi.
I don't have it accessible to myself right now, but there's a long midrash answering Gail's question, whether we like it or accept it or not, that at this time when Aaron is not mentioned at all, it's because he's back with the Israelites, preparing them for the journey, reminding that, teaching them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because they know him, but they don't know Moses yet.
Mhm,
He's the familiar leader for them.
mhm.
Moses is in the adversarial role versus the Pharaoh. So there's a long midrash about that. I forget in which source. But that's the classical answer. Where's Aaron these days?
Thank you.
Yes, Pastor Bruce.
We haven't, I don't think we've read it yet, but as we read number 3, 4 through 6 there, I think we will find as we read it that it doesn't actually say who was talking.
Correct.
But that's part of your question about where is Aaron. Well, he may have been talking this time, but we don't really know because it doesn't say.
So,
Just a thought.
it's an interesting observation. It's an interesting observation.
But the verb in verse 3 is in the singular. It's just
Okay.
that he came,
Oh.
even though it's Moses and Aaron.
Okay.
They
And if
spoke,
you go, that's
they,
right.
They spoke is in the plural. But
And if you
Isn't
go
that-
back to verse 1, if you go back to verse 1, this is it's a very personal
Sure. Said to Moses.
discussion.
Mhm.
So Aaron here is the tag along.
Okay.
he's the wingman.
That's right. So, and David, any other discussion here? Yes, Chris.
Good morning. I was just considering the fact that Moses, when he started with this whole idea, well, God started the whole idea. Moses kept saying, I'm not qualified. I cannot do this. It's impossible. So then God said, okay, then here comes Aaron. He'll do the spokesman. But as he gets to know God and the power of God, he's becoming so strong, I believe, in his heart about the knowledge of God, that now he can speak truly from his heart
Right.
through God without the help of Aaron, which I think that's what it was intended from the beginning, that Aaron would be, Moses would be the one that would lead the people out.
Then you remember we had a little brief discussion also about what are the plagues, who are the plagues intended for? And,
Right.
and we also said maybe it's also intended for Moses.
Right.
Okay, because up to that point, as Gail pointed out, that led to that discussion. Up to that point, Aaron was the spokesperson, and then all of a sudden Moses becomes the spokesperson. Okay, and that's what we see here. So maybe it was just an excuse Moses was doing. It was had come up with for the as an excuse to not have to assume this role.
Right.
Okay. So I don't know. We can go on and on just discussing that, but it's a very important concept. So shall we read on, or is there more discussion?
Larry.
Yes, Larry, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry I got on late, the computer problems. Anyway, Friedman has a whole different interpretation of all this.
Good.
He says basically the purpose of the plagues is not punishment, but rather to make Yahweh known.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you look at all this as a clash of giants and everyone else is bit players, it's God versus Pharaoh.
Totally.
And this is all set up to prove there is only one God and he is all powerful. And
He has a whole, and it goes on and on with this theme.
Perfect.
Very good. It also is a commentary in the, just a little side comment. It also has a commentary about the role of idols.
Mhm.
Okay, and who's really in charge?
God.
Oh, God, absolutely.
Yeah, because many times, and idols don't only come as little statues. We can use the word also metaphorically.
Mhm.
Okay,
the,
there are. Yes, go ahead,
go ahead.
Michael.
Yeah, it's also to demonstrate really the power, not only of God, but the power of the Hebrew God, I think. Because up until that point, no peoples had ever delivered this type of a blow to their oppressors.
Good point. Very good point. So there are multiple ways of thinking about this series of events, and it's good. It's just very good. Thank you all. Any other comments, or should we read on? Lack of comments. David, take it away.
And Moses and Aaron went in unto Pharaoh and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, how long wilt thou refuse to humble thyself before me? Let my people go, that they may serve me. Else, if they refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring locusts into thy border, and they shall cover the face of the earth, that one shall not be able to see the earth, and they shall eat the residue of that which is escaped, and which remaineth unto you from the hail, and shall eat every tree which groweth for you out of the field. And thy houses shall be filled, and the houses of all thy servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians, as neither thy fathers nor thy fathers' fathers have seen, since the day that they were upon the earth unto this day. And he turned and went out from Pharaoh.
Well, this is a much more powerful
Statement.
the statement. As we've tried to do in the past, how would you, there are different ways people can respond to this. And before we read those, what are the different ways that Pharaoh, the different options, the different choices Pharaoh can make at this point?
Surrender for once.
Okay, you can. Any other comments? Yes, Don. Don, you're muted.
Playing my broken record again. He doesn't have any choice. God has already hardened his heart, so he has no choice here.
Okay. Or Pharaoh's heart is already hard and God's made it harder. But as a leader in business or a leader in government, and somebody makes this kind of statement, okay, that you may approach it in different ways. Yes, David.
This is Wendy.
Oh, it's Wendy's hand. Okay.
It's me. One of the things that we haven't discussed with this, but we read about it for the last couple of weeks, and it sort of grates on me, and I shouldn't be knocking God, but he says, let my people go so they may serve me. And it's like, wait a minute, they should want to serve him. They shouldn't have to serve him. And it's not like he's saying, let my people go and we will make everything in the land of milk and honey. And, something where they want to serve him. but should not just let him go so they can serve me, because maybe he won't be good. He punishes people. So anyway, that was my thought. I just don't like that sentence.
Okay. Any comments about that? Is it a fair statement that God is removing the people so that he claims these people are his people and not Pharaoh's? They were only sojourners in the land of Egypt, borrowed statement. But is that fair? Yes, Wendy.
Actually, this is the David hand.
Oh, that's okay.
But there are two points that I'd like to make here. One of them is that God is giving the people the option of serving him in whatever way they wish. And also, he says that they may serve me. He doesn't say that they have to serve me.
That's right.
But I think that the idea of service can be many, many things. And I would like to interpret that as being many different possibilities of service. And over many millennia, the Jewish tradition has come up with specific ways of serving God. But there are others, I think.
That was part of our discussion. Thank you, David. It was part of our discussion several months ago about what it is to serve. And, you're giving.
And also, I have to agree with that because I would very much like to stay married to Wendy.
There you go. And
Oh, it's adorable. So adorable.
because and think of it this way. David hits the nail on the head. In a marriage, both partners are giving into the marriage. They're both giving into it. If one becomes a taker and one is the giver, sooner or later, there's a total imbalance. Okay, and I won't go any further than that. We could have many, many other discussions. Helene, I see you smiling. I must have hit a chord, the psychology chord.
Because I agree with you so much, and because the balance is everything, and God loves us all no matter what we choose. Our choices are ours, and how we express them, but it all goes back to telling your story.
Yes.
If the whole notion of Torah, as I see it, is storytelling, interpretation.
Right.
Is our choice. But without this whole discussion, I listened so carefully. This is a beautiful thing because we are telling our stories, but God is listening to all of them.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? Well, we had some interesting discussion here. So no other comments. Why don't we read on?
Okay, and Pharaoh's servants said unto him, how long shall this man be a snare unto us? Let them go, that they may serve the Lord their God. Knowest thou not yet that Egypt is destroyed? And Moses and Aaron were brought again unto Pharaoh, and he said unto them, go, serve the Lord your God. But who are they that shall go? And Moses said, we will go with our young and with our old, with our sons and with our daughters, with our flocks and with our herds we will go, for we must hold a feast unto the Lord. And he said unto them, so be the Lord with you, as I will let you go and your little ones. See ye that evil is before your face. Not so, Go now, ye that are men, and serve the Lord, for that is what ye desire. And they were driven out from Pharaoh's presence.
Okay. By the way, the locusts are back. If you remember dipping your finger, you will be doing this in several
Yeah.
weeks.
Passover.
Dipping your finger in the wine and dropping Arba. This is the locust. And any comments about this, about the plague itself of locusts? Any comments about that? Yes, Chris, and then
I
Don.
just thought that was the famine that brought the Hebrews into Mizraim. And it looks like now it's famine again when the locusts, at least for one day, for the locusts to take over every single thing that it was on the ground. They had been picked, and they had to be with those animals, those little critters all around them. And I thought it was like, well, okay, so now Joseph saved them from starvation at one point. But now they're back again in the same place.
Sure.
Because they don't know if that locust is going to remain one day or is it going to be for as long as Pharaoh refuses to obey. But I thought it was interesting that locusts, the famine, which that's what locusts do. They destroy every living thing as far as the harvest goes.
Right. Plant life is, if you will, kaput.
Right.
Right. Yes. None.
Yeah, two-sided question. One is that the locusts are going to invade from outside of Egypt. They're crossing the border. I'm wondering whether that might be from Libya or from the eastern side. I don't know. I mean, we'll never know probably. But the other is that if the locusts come in and eat everything, they're going to also eat everything. If Pharaoh still says no, there's not going to be anything left for anybody, including the Hebrew. And also, where did Moses and his people get the herds and flocks if they were slaves making bricks? I don't get that. I mean, you're in a situation now where Pharaoh, if he says no, then everybody starves, and the herds and the flocks, which the Hebrews aren't supposed to have anyway. So I get a little confused in the detail here.
It's an interesting point. Rabbi, you have that you want to say something.
Well, I'm trying to remember what the Aramaic word for blooper is. What I mean, there are obviously signs and hints in the text that tell us that that this was written much later on.
Right.
And granted, it was handed down orally for generations, and whether the storytellers or whether the anthology writers, added a few details that, like I say, were bloopers, and we catch them now. We're not the first generation to catch them, but Don just caught another one right there. Why would it say that they had flocks and flocks and herds? Unless they're talking about the flocks and herds that they may have been watching for their Egyptian owners, but that doesn't necessarily fall into the category of slaves.
Good points. Any other comments? Okay. Any comments about what Pharaoh is saying? Well, first, let's go back to Moses. Okay. And he says that, Pharaoh says, go worship your God. And Moses replied, we will all go. and he both young and old, our sons, our daughters, flocks and herds, in order to observe the Lord's festival. Any comments about that? Or do we just take it, okay. Yeah, we read this all every year, but what does this imply? Yes, Gail.
I'm just wondering what the midrash is about this particular part. Exactly what are they going to do when they get to?
Oh, well, that comes up in a little bit.
Oh,
That comes up in a little bit.
I jumped ahead.
It's okay. It's all right. And it's very explicit too. Okay. Chris had her hand up, and then Larry and David. Okay. Or Wendy. Okay.
Well, I definitely see that Pharaoh is beginning to bend, beginning to give in, or reconsidering his actions. And he's still not going to give it all, but he is beginning to recognize there is a God out there, and there is a God for the Hebrews, and he is in charge of this thing. And so at that point, even if it's a weakness kind of a thing, okay, you can go ahead and go to the mountain, take everybody you want. But to me, it's an acknowledgement, even if it's out of resentment or out of weakness, but he's beginning to recognize Adonai, our God.
Okay, but I think that we have to read the rest of the sentence as well, because this is, yes, it appears at first
Right.
but it's going to become conditional. And there's sort of like an interesting wordplay that comes up.
Yeah, give and take. I'll give you.
Yes. Well, it's more than give and take. It's more than give and take.
Yes.
It gives him, he's changing his mind.
Right.
Again. Yes, Larry, and then David, and then Rabbi.
Okay, I'd like to read from Fox's translation of number
Please.
9. Moshe said, with our young ones, with our elders, we will go, with our sons and with our daughters, with our sheep and with our oxen, we will go. For it is Yahweh's pilgrimage festival for us. Now, I want to emphasize daughters. We don't usually see this in the text. And also the fact that men, women, children, and animals are going, this pretty much makes certain there is no intent of coming back.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
That is correct. That is correct. Because so in Pharaoh's mind, maybe he's saying, "Oh, I was right all along."
Mm-hmm.
Yes, David, that's a Wendy hand. Did I get it right?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
This is very short, because as soon as David was reading it, and then you said, what does this mean? And I thought, well, it means Moses has become a good leader. He knows no man left behind. We don't, like in the field, if you were in the services, the captains or the whoever is out there in war, they don't leave anybody behind if they can help it. And that's what Moses was saying. We are all going, and no one, so no one has to wonder, do I get to go too? And nobody's left behind.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. Good point. Yes, Rabbi.
Well, one comment is the sons and daughters are going, but what about the wives? Wives aren't mentioned. It's just just a thought. But also in Pharaoh's mind, Pharaoh looks at his culture and what he knows of the Hebrew practices, their rites, rituals, whatever. No other people at this point has the the females, whether it's the daughters, wives, also has the females participating in those kind of rites. That's men only.
Oh,
So Pharaoh is saying, as others have pointed out, Pharaoh is saying, this is a trick. You're speaking evil in my eyes. Men can go because men do these things.
mhm.
Men have roles to play in the religious rite. Don't try to fool me by saying you're taking your sons, your daughters, everybody else. I know that says to me this is not a religious thing that you're doing.
Good. Another good point.
That's understandable. Yeah.
Okay. Because if we go on, and when Chris had mentioned that, okay, go, but what if in verse 10, if we reread that,
And he said unto them, so be the Lord with you, as I will let you go, and your little ones. See ye that evil is before your face.
okay, so I have a slightly different translation. When it says, the Lord be with you, the same as I mean to let your children go with you. Clearly, you are bent on mischief. Okay. Any comments about that? Isn't Pharaoh twisting the words a little bit? Rabbi Platt says, let him be with you as much I will let you go, namely, not at all. So he's also saying that in this interpretation, he's saying God is not going to really be with you. Just like I'm not going to be with you. You're still shirkers. You're still trying to do everything. Clearly, you are bent on mischief. And so it says, no, you menfolk go and worship the Lord, since that is what you want. So he really hasn't gotten the message. His thinking is still getting the better of him. And as Don points out, his heart is so hard that, and God has hardened it so that he can't see how his thinking is being clouded by his emotion, by the emotions that he has vested into this situation. And so they're expelled from Pharaoh's presence. Any other comments? Do you agree with Rabbi Platt? Yes, Suzanne.
It just seems to me that that with Pharaoh saying that the men can go, that he's holding the women and children hostage.
Yeah, that's another way of looking at it. Very good observation. And one of there's a word for mischief, ra'ah.
That's evil.
Evil, but is it? But according to the Sonner edition, of commentary, he says ra'ah has also been taken to be a Hebraized word for the name of the Egyptian god Re or Ra. Okay, the sun god. Okay, good crossword good crossword word, Aten, the sun, the sun disk that it is often shown in the Egyptian hieroglyphics.
Aten Ra.
Aten Ra. And yet, Larry, you were going to say something?
Yeah, that altar has that same commentary.
Okay. So it shows that there that again and indeed this is a challenge to also the god of locusts. The Egyptian had a deity to protect them from locusts. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Serapia or Serapia. It depends. I don't know where you put the emphasis. I just don't know. But but it's an interesting situation. But so if somebody wants to read on, unless there are other comments, okay, David, you're on.
Okay, this begins with verse 12. And the Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thy hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, and they may come up unto the land upon the land of Egypt, and eat every herb of the land, even all that the hail hath left. And Moses stretched forth his rod over the land of Egypt, and the Lord brought an east wind, very similar to the east wind that we are having right now in the desert, and all the night. And when it was morning, the east wind brought the locusts, and the locusts went up over all the land of Egypt and rested in all the borders of Egypt. Very grievous were they. Before them there were no such locusts as they, neither after them shall be such. For they covered the face of the whole earth, and the land was darkened, and they did eat every herb of the land, and all the fruit of the trees which the hail had left. And there remained not any green thing, either tree or herb of the field, through all the land of Egypt. And then
okay, let's stop at that point, David. I'm sorry. Any comments about the locusts? Yes, Rabbi.
Well, let Don do his because.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I missed.
I'm going to share a midrash, but it's a little facetious. So
okay, please go ahead, Don.
Well, now it's clear that the locusts didn't come from the Libyan side; came from the east. So that clarifies that. Answered that question. That's really all I had.
Okay. It's an interesting comment here that I see in Plout that the east wind, such a wind will also provide the Reed Sea and supply Israel with quail in the book of Numbers.
Yeah, it's referred to as the Ruach Kadim that comes from the east. Yeah.
Okay, and the west wind, a wind from the sea, is another way is from the Palestinian perspective, a wind from the sea, and the Sea of Reeds or Reed Sea. And so it will become the route, if you will, that is followed, not the route of a tree, but the route that they will follow to leave Egypt. Any other comments about that? You had a midrash on this.
Yeah. The Rabbi Yochanan, When the
Okay.
locusts came, the Egyptians, endeavoring to find some joy in their plight, said, "Let us gather the locusts and pickle them and put them in casks." The Holy One retorted sharply, "Scoundrels, you Egyptians, do you expect to find any joy in the plague that I bring upon you?" Immediately the Lord turned an exceedingly strong the sea wind, the westerly wind, and what is signified by the words that follow, there remained not one locust, that even those that had been pickled in the Egyptians' pots and casks then took wing and fled.
So what is I have to ask, what is the connotation of pickling the locusts?
I don't
They're
know.
preserving
They
them.
they were in search of a deli.
Yeah,
I
no, they're
I don't
preserving.
know.
It's a method of
Right, it's a
preservation.
method of preserving them. Right.
That's right. And is it that, and for what purpose? For what purpose? How many of you have ever been to a science fair where there's always a food stand that serves
Critters.
different critters?
Yes,
Okay. The different insects that one can
right.
consume. Have you ever eaten grasshoppers or
Yes.
locusts or bees or
Or
beetles
snails.
or beetles? You could, I mean, the list goes on and on. People eat ants. They eat caterpillars
Yeah,
in certain parts of the world.
yeah.
Okay. Yes, Chris, you have your hand up.
Yes, I agree to all of the above. I think in my lifetime, I have at one point or another threatened that if I don't try that, they're not going to feed me the rest of my life. But another thing that I have found is like, for example, specimens that we find in museums or science places where they pin them to the wall or to a card or to a frame and put glass over. I remember had been to a school of forestry in my lifetime, and it was loaded with creatures and animals that they had been selected that they will become like the locusts at one point or another in the agricultural level. So that would be another way to worship them too, for maintain them as they are for whatever reason they had to. They were strange people.
Okay. Yeah, yes, Suzanne.
When I was working for the Guard, we had to go down to Marana, one of my staff and myself. And this particular time, they were kind of plagued with grasshoppers. And they were so plentiful. I mean, they were all over the walls. They were on the floor. They had a constantly sweep the walkways and even the rooms that we could walk and dust and brush off the chairs. It was it was gross to say the least.
Sure.
But it, of course, people were making jokes about, the plagues of the plague of the locusts, with the Egyptians. But knowing how bad that was, and then reading how much worse it was going to be for the Egyptians. I mean, this was, in my mind, because I don't like insects, it was really a horrific.
Yeah.
And it was probably very difficult for them to get any kind of reprieve. to find a place to sit or rest or.
Right.
More than that, I don't, a show of hands, how many of you have experienced severe tinnitus? It's like a swarm of locusts constantly going on around you.
Ooh.
Because it's not just the sight. It's not just it taking up space and getting into things that you don't want them to get into. It's a constant noise.
Noise.
And it's horrendous. Have you ever been in a forest when the locusts are out?
Yeah.
It can be quite mesmerizing.
Yes.
It's because there's no let up. Yes, Larry, please.
There was one point we had cicadas. And
Yes.
it's on a cycle and there's huge amounts all at once. But we have to ask the question, who created the insects and why are there more of them than any other animal form?
Well, you know that the statement, God must have loved the beetle the most.
No, I don't know.
There's so many more beetles than any other critter. And but it's it is a very interesting situation that you do see. Anything else about the locusts, though? Yes, Gail, you had your hand up.
I was just going to say, the insect world supports a lot of other animals. I mean, there's part
Definitely.
of it. Without them, we'd be in very, very bad shape. Very bad shape.
That's correct.
Food chain.
Yes. This is the, now we get into the science of it. And we can get even into the military aspect of this because of survival training, what you can eat, what you cannot eat. And insects are on that list. And is a good source of protein and nutrition. But as has been pointed out, you first have to get over quite a lot of the appearance. And Rabbi, isn't this one of the things we're not supposed to eat? That is, it ain't too kosher. Yeah. Just like shrimp, the insects of the sea. Anyway, any other comments? Yes. Go ahead, Suzanne.
I find it interesting that in verse, was it 14, that it says that there were no such locusts as they, and neither after them shall be such. It was like these were special locusts created by God for this one purpose only.
Mm-hmm. There is an entire religion that uses an event of locusts or large grasshoppers that made them say, this must be the place where we should live. The Mormons. Okay. So this also had religious significance to them because of their journey and what they had escaped from. And so it's something to, just to be aware of, just a little tidbit. Any other comments? Okay. David, unless somebody else would like to read. I don't see any other hands. So David, please continue.
Okay, are we now at verse 15?
Yes.
Covered the face of the whole earth, and that the land was darkened, and they did eat every herb of the land, and all the fruit of the trees which the hail had left. And there remained not any green thing, either tree or herb of the field throughout all of the land of Egypt. And then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron in haste, and he said, I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. Now therefore forgive, I pray thee, my sin only this once, and entreat the Lord your God that he may take away from me this death only. And he went out from Pharaoh and entreated the Lord. And the Lord turned an exceeding strong west wind, which took up the locusts and drove them into the Red Sea. There remained not one locust in all the border of Egypt, but the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the children of Israel go.
Any comments? Discussion?
Yeah, could David or someone go back over the English translation,
Yeah.
verse 17, please?
Okay, here go verse 17. Now therefore forgive, I pray thee, my sin only this once, and entreat the Lord your God that he may take away from me this death only.
Yeah, what's the only this once? You know, I mean, Pharaoh's okay, I blew it, but just this one time. You know, I don't want to have a bad rap saying that I'm not a good Pharaoh, or or I'm not really in charge. I'm not sure that I understand what Pharaoh's point is right here.
Well, again, is this, he's saying, oh my goodness, I've done all this wrong. Does he really realize what he has done? And he thinks it's just this one episode, of whatever he has done. I don't think he understands that the concept of the 400 years culminating during his reign.
Mhm.
Yes, Chris.
Yes, thank you. My thought goes to the Hebrew people. We are talking a lot about how the Egyptians are responding, Pharaoh and all of that. But I am thinking, I wonder what really is going on in their mind. What are they seeing and they are understanding about our God? It just hit me. I said there are speculators in the top of the hill looking at all these things happening. Do we realize how special we are to the sight of God? Do we realize all the things that God can save us from? I just don't know what really is going on in their mind to consider how God is sparing them from. Well, some of them are going through the same thing, but just to understand the power of God is beyond any comprehension. And I know we go through wonderful things in life every day, and maybe we don't give the emphasis of really glorifying our God as we should for all the wonderful things we receive every day. But I don't know, I just got at all because of what they were able to experience at this time.
Good point. Yes, Tom.
I'm trying to, at this point, Pharaoh, who is in command of the entire nation, millions of Egyptians and other slaves, and he's in the presence of his servants and his officials, and his country at this point is in a total state of collapse. I mean, he's basically lost control of everything that he used to have in command of. So, at this point, is he looking for some ego saver? Is he looking for He's in a desperate situation. I just wonder what kind of reprieve is he looking for, and what could possibly help him out of this situation?
Okay. Grace has had her hand up, and then Gail.
Thank you, everyone. Great discussion. What I am seeing at verse 17 is that Pharaoh has recognized his vulnerability for the first time. So it's like he's saying, just this once, I'm seeing I'm vulnerable. Please take away this so that I don't die. Ask your God to remove these locusts. He's recognizing that he's vulnerable all of a sudden, and just kind of what Don just mentioned is that, you know, his whole country, which he's been in control of, has kind of decided that, well, we're vulnerable. When are you gonna see it, right? So that's what I'm getting at that particular verse. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. Yes. First, Gail, you had, and then Ruth Ann.
I was just going to say that of the first few words in that, in 16, it really emphasizes how much of a panic the Pharaoh's in, because he hurried to call Moses and Aaron. I mean, that's a very alarming statement. When he hurried, he didn't just call them. He was beginning to panic.
But has he learned his full lesson yet? Has he truly atoned?
Now, we know the answer to that, Marty.
Right. It's rhetorical. I know. Go ahead, Ruth Ann.
I'm not sure whether we know the answer to that either. But I mean, my translation says, now forgive my offense just this one more time. I mean, it kind of makes me think that Pharaoh learned his lesson a long time ago, okay? But God keeps hardening his heart and then unhardening it. It's like he hardens his heart, and then before the next plague, he unhardens it so he remembers what happened before. I mean, I think Pharaoh learned his lesson. I'm just wondering how much of this is still for the Jewish people, that God feels that he has to still prove himself to the Jewish people after all these years of slavery, you know, that he's afraid that the Jewish people are going to forget about him, you know, after they're free. And this is not for the Egyptians, this is for the Jewish people.
Good point. Yes, Michael.
I have somewhat of a different question. I throw this in here. How long were the Hebrews in slavery and bondage before God intervened with the 10 plagues?
400 years plus.
The tradition says 437.
Right.
137 years.
And so my follow-up question, if I may, why did it take 400 years before God intervened?
It's an excellent question. And that has been asked innumerable times. So I'm going, any ideas in anyone's mind first?
It might be that the slavery, the oppression, and the meanness was gradual. If you go all the way back to Joseph, when they were really slaves then, but the Pharaoh was kind to them and let them live in Goshen, and they thought it was really pretty good. They had a good thing going for a while. And over the centuries, Pharaoh's heart got harder and harder and harder. So I think it was a gradual increase of cruelty. That's my guess, just a guess.
Okay. Gail had her hand up, then Don. I think it was Larry before Don. Okay. So Gail, Larry, Don.
Isn't the traditional answer to that question that they had to ask for help, and they had to, you know, they shouted out to the Lord, you know, help us, we're suffering. And he heard them. I think maybe he was waiting for them to ask? I don't know. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Larry?
Okay, as we are talking about this darkness, just read there are over 1/3 Americans who have lost electric, are in darkness. We have a pandemic, we have snowstorms, ice, fires. How long till we get the message? We won't answer that question.
That's a good. By the way, that commentary, that begs comment from the standpoint of how often that has been said. That it's the same question that you related just now has been said time and time again. Okay, it's a song too. How many times, right?
Thank you, Rabbi Zimmerman.
Go ahead. So, Don, please.
Yeah. Well, it's 4 centuries since Joseph. I mean, it's several Egyptian dynasties and innumerable pharaohs since then. And between then and Moses, there were, the Hyksos invasion, and Egypt was taken over by a couple of invasions. So, a lot happened. It's hard to say what took them so.
I have read some midrash that says that some of the Israelites had even forgotten the importance of circumcision. What happens in some of the teachings that we've all heard over the years, that is that when you worship God, you strengthen God. And there are many ways in which that worship occurs. Doing the mitzvot, performing them. Acts of kindness. What we're doing, learning Torah, discussing it in depth as best we can.
You're doing something.
Could they have forgotten? Yes. Go ahead, Michael. Yes.
The way I see it is that you're strengthening yourself. Or there's got to be then also it could be a two-sided coin, so to speak. You're respecting God and you're strengthening yourself. When you have a strong belief in God, this picks, if you believe in God, you create a strength within yourself, somewhere to go in a time of stress. It's just something that I think is inbred in most people, because most people believe in something higher than themselves. And so it's also a way of life for most people. For myself, it is. I like for myself, I come from an Orthodox background, but today it's very difficult to keep that, So I pick and choose things that I believe that works for me and that God will understand. And so we all deal with that in one way or another, but it does strengthen me.
Point. Don, did you have your hand up too? I thought somebody else had their hand up.
Yeah,
Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, well, I'll jump in, and I don't necessarily want this to break off into certainly not into a political discussion, but one of the ways that some of my professors, for example, answered this loose question of why did it take 400 plus years, is some of them say that the Israelites, because of the way that they were treated, because of Joseph's close connection with the Pharaoh, etc., is that while they weren't in the aristocracy, but they certainly were comfortable, if you want to use the word assimilated, okay, into their Egyptian culture, whether they were considered slaves, whether they were considered workers, and at some of the time the term is the same. But for quite a few generations, they were comfortable in their Egyptian lifestyle, in the Egyptian environment. Along comes later on, and we don't know all the details of why, but along comes probably, and I'm disagreeing with somebody who I guess it was the guy at the klezmer concert the other day, who's but along comes the Pharaoh who who really is the first anti-Semite, in a position of leadership, and he says we're going to kill all the and we're not really sure where that comes from, but as an act of, again, changing, and you can play on words, changing whether it's an act of defense or defiance, or whether it's an act of faith, whatever. But that's when the Israelites truly start to cry out, and the verb in the Torah changes, that their cries, their pleas to God because of the oppression and the threats, the persecution. The verb is different for their cries to God, and that's why God answers at this point, but with the story of Moses, recognizing not that God wasn't paying attention to the Israelites, but the Israelites, kind of what Michael is saying, that the Israelites were comfortable in their skin and comfortable in their environment. They knew that there was a God, but they didn't have to plead to God for anything until all of a sudden the whole tone of their existence changed. Now, again, I don't necessarily want to get into a whole big, description of anti-Semitism and whatever, but that is one of the literary approaches to
So,
understanding that.
are you making a distinction between a prayer or a plea and a prayer or plea from the heart? Are you drawing a distinction there? In other words, they had to feel what they were saying, that there is a God listening to them, that they had to feel that God's presence was in their heart.
I mean, you could put it in those terms. Again, the traditional classical exposition of this is that there, again, it's they assimilated too much.
Right.
Right.
Okay? And again, what was the particular episode that caused this particular Pharaoh to now strike out against the Israelites?
The children.
We don't know.
Yeah, it starts 400 years, 300 years or whatever, when they start to
did
kill
they
the
align
Israelites
with one of
first.
Right.
did they align with one of the other, with the Hyksos or with some other tribe that was trying to overthrow the government? Don't really know.
Good
But
point.
the classical traditional lesson is, yes, you can be comfortable and you can appreciate your assimilated environment, but
That's a good but.
There is consequences to that.
That's right. Don had your hand up, and then Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Rabbi. That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
Fixed on the word assimilation, because from that point, it seems like assimilation versus separation is the story of the Jewish people. I mean,
Well, incidentally, that's the tension in Talmudically,
Mhm.
and even into the mystics, about Joseph. Some of them call Joseph a righteous person, and others saying no, he was the first assimilated Jew. So
Ah,
you know,
Yeah, all the way down to Hessel and the Zionists.
yeah.
right.
It hasn't
Yes.
changed in 3,000 years. Thank you.
Chris, you had your hand up for a
Yeah.
while.
Thank you. I was just taking in consideration the importance of the retelling of our story, the retelling of the event. I am sure that if we, as where we were exit from the desert into Egypt, that the leaders would have taken more time into repeating about God and the circumcision and everything else that we were supposed to do. We wouldn't have forgotten God, and He would have been in our midst, and maybe our life in Egypt would have been totally different. Maybe even the Egyptians would have turned around and said, "Oh, this God really works. The other ones just do things that we don't like." But the importance of the retelling is the beauty of our traditions and our faith, that we have to remember, constantly remember who is really our God, who is really our the one we worship, the one we adore. So because of that, I just thought it's so funny, and I like your explanation, Ralph. It totally makes perfect sense that when you go to a place that is total strange, you absorb so much from that community. And if you are by yourself, then more likely you become one of them. But I am grateful that God did hear our prayers. And on that sense, the cry of the heart, that's more than the verbal thing, I think. You were right. You were asking that to Marty.
Yeah.
That when you going deep into your heart and you begin to cry out to God, that's definitely something God hears. And when you're seeing your children being killed and sent into the river, that would have been a big cry. Definitely, that would have been a turning point, I guess, from them to realize that these people were up to destroy us somehow. Thank you. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Any other comments? Well, why don't we read on and see what's going to happen next?
Okay, are we at verse 21 now?
21.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And the Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thy hand towards heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. And Moses stretched forth his hand towards heaven, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days. They saw not one another, neither rose any from his place for their days. But all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. And Pharaoh.
Okay, any comments about this? Sorry. Yes, David.
Yes, I have one that I've been wanting to say all day. There are very few parts in Exodus where we're able to take something that is written in the scripture and find some evidence in science to back it up. But this is one of them. The plague of darkness. And of course, we have to do a little bit of trickery because it says in Genesis, God created the earth, heavens and earth in 7 days, and those days may have been long ages. But the 3 days may have been a lot fewer in days, and they may have been 3 minutes or 3 seconds. Anyway, we know that in the Arizona desert, the next time there will be a total eclipse of the sun is about 500 years from now. Not very often. But I would like to say that in the land of Egypt, in between 1210 BCE and 1235 BCE, there were no fewer than 5 major eclipses of the sun. There was a total eclipse on July the 18th, 1210 BCE. There was another total eclipse on March the 5th, 1222 BCE. And there was a third total eclipse on May the 26th, 1235 BCE. This is certainly not strong evidence to date the Exodus, but it is something. And I just wanted to mention that, bring that to
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Gail.
Well, I have to take issue with that a little bit. First of all, this supposedly lasted for 3 days. Eclipses don't last for 3 days at a
No,
time.
I submitted that.
Now, the other thing is that, and I'm sure Rabbi can talk about this. Have you ever been in Israel when there's a Hamseen? You can feel the darkness when there's a Hamseen. It is very visceral. I don't know how else to, it's nasty, and it can go on for 2, 3, 4 days. It's really something.
What is that?
Dust storm.
Well, it isn't, it's not really a dust storm. It just, the atmosphere becomes very red, very dense, heavy, dusty, yes, but it isn't wind blowing. It just settles like pot on a lid on a pot. I'm sure the rabbis experienced this. It's hard to describe, but it's very
No,
depressing.
you're doing a good job in describing it.
It's very
But,
depressing.
Yeah, they go back and forth as to whether the Hamsin in Arabic means 50. So whether it's 50 times a year, whether it's once every 50 years, something like that. But it is an all-invasive type of. It's not so much turns the air turns red but it imposes a deep sadness and mental depression, and whatever, because it literally there's no sunshine, there's no lack of vitamin D, whatever you want to say, and it really is it's very, very threatening. Doesn't happen every year, but when it does, they talk about it, and the meteorologists can anticipate it coming a few days in advance, and people really have to prepare. I just wanted to point out one thing also that kind of went. It slipped by. Every other time Moses is told to lift up his hand, stretch out his hand over the earth. This time he's told to stretch out his hand towards the sky. So the recognition is that somehow this is coming from the heavens or from the sky and is related to the sun or some other astrological event.
Okay. Don had his hand up first, then Larry. You're muted, Don.
All right, here we go again. Just want to mention around that same time, dated around that same time, was the eruption of Thera a little bit to the north, near Crete. And it was a colossal volcanic eruption, and it would have ejected enough material into the sky to create total darkness. So it could be any number of causes.
Good point. Yes, Larry.
I'd like to give the commentary from Friedman on 1021 and 1022. One will feel darkness. Like the other plagues, this one is explicitly identified as different from what is found in nature at other times. The hail and locusts are unlike anything that has ever happened in Egypt. The darkness can be felt. There is no chance whatsoever that the Egyptians or any interpreter of this text can understand these as being chance occurrences in nature. Then 1022, 3 days. This is further indication that no natural occurrence, such as an eclipse, is intended here. No eclipse lasts 3 days. So this is really emphasized by Friedman.
It's a good point. It's a good point. It's the major eclipse. Something had to get in between, closer to the earth, and sort of sit there for a while. But darkness, total darkness. They've experimented with this in people. Just being in a room with total darkness. The only thing that really there is they don't feel any movement of air. And the only effect they really can feel is that of gravity. But they lose all sense of perception. They can't hear it. Even hearing can be impaired just by the darkness, which is interesting. Yes, Rabbi.
So, how do we understand the end of the paragraph, if you will? But the Israelites,
yes,
enjoyed light, and not just
in
in
their
their
homes.
dwellings, but according to the commentaries, wherever they went. It was like, picture, who is it? Is it Linus from Peanuts with the cloud over his head all the time? So the Israelites had a light bulb over their heads wherever they were.
Yes, Grace, this is not scientific. But I do, but but the experience and the thickness of it, it is like a suffocation of senses. And the way it's described here, it is more powerful than even an eclipse. So you're right that eclipses do occur, and there's a biblical story about somebody saying this, everything will stand still, in the sky. But this is a very profound occurrence. And so I just, any further, you mentioned you can feel it. Yes, it's touchable. You can sometimes say, even the air is so heavy, I can, it's oppressing. Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, I mean, it seems certainly, one of the commentaries is if it was so dark, why didn't they just light candles? So the indication that it was as much of a mental emotional darkness, the frustration, the fear, all those emotions now coming to after all these plagues that they and now directly attacking their sun god. There's no sun anymore. What is happening? And it's as much an emotional darkness as it is the actual physical lack of light. But the Israelites saw it as I guess the mixed metaphor is that saw the light at the end of the tunnel.
The words that you use to describe this reminds me of another phrase by a very prominent woman, Eleanor Roosevelt. when she said it is better. You know, they were talking about the darkness of what our country was going through, and she said that it's better to light a candle than to curse the dark.
Mhm.
Yes, go, please, Suzanne.
I also see this as a spiritual reference to God. In other words, God is the way, the light, and without him, you're in total darkness.
It's a very nice, that's very good. That's very good. Thank you. Very, very well stated. Any other comments? Well, let's see what happens. So, David, would you care to read on?
Okay, so, and Pharaoh called unto Moses and said, Go ye, serve the Lord, only let your flocks and your herds be stayed. Let your little ones also go with you. And Moses said, Thou must also give into our hand sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice unto the Lord our God. Our cattle also shall go with us. Shall not a hoof be left behind. For thereof must we take to serve the Lord our God, and we know not with what we must serve the Lord until we come thither. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let them go. And Pharaoh said unto him, Get thee from me, take heed to thyself, see my face no more, for in the day thou seest my face, thou shalt die. And Moses said, Thou hast spoken well. I will see thy face again no more.
Okay, that's pretty powerful moment. I mean, you could see, you can actually, the way it's written, you can actually, you remember the old, I think it was Walter Cronkite show, You Are There? Some of you may remember.
No, that was Edward
the
R. Murrow.
1950s. Was that someone else?
Wasn't that Edward R. Murrow?
Maybe it was. Maybe it was. I don't know. But the way this is written, you can imagine what's going on here. They're very powerful words that are being spoken. Any comments? Okay. Well, okay. We'll see what. Any comments about this? Do you think the Pharaoh has learned any lessons? No. So now comes now there's going to be another plague.
Well, wait a minute.
Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Wait.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Pharaoh says, okay, leave your flocks and whatever. Take your children, go do your worship, etc., etc. Moses says, "Oh, wait a minute, buddy. You know, you've got to provide us with the sacrifices and the burnt offerings. If we're not going to take our own cattle, you know, that's what we need for our rituals. You know, da 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 da. So then Pharaoh he keeps on getting pushed to
Yeah.
to the nth degree. So I don't think it's a plea for sympathy, but what's really going on? Then Moses says, wait a minute, we really don't even know what we're supposed to do till we get there.
That's right.
That's what I was going to mention, because he says we don't know what we're supposed to sacrifice until we arrive. So that was what I was thinking.
Was that someone else beep or something for me?
Somebody's alarm or something.
All right, whatever. Anyway,
It was me.
oh, okay, okay. Any comments about that?
You know, I don't, you know, I suppose it, we talked about this in a different context last year. I think that there's a psychotherapist and biblical scholar in New York named Peter Pitzela. You know, and I can imagine him having two people stand there. One is Moses, one is Pharaoh. You know, and you know, which they're both frustrated with each other.
Right.
They're trying to represent all of the power of Pharaoh with his Egyptian, you know, aristocracy, royalty, and Moses representing the God, you know, whom he's trying to introduce, and you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and they're frustrated with each other. We think we've gotten agreement, but no, at the last minute, we break the agreement. And then, you know, kind of Pharaoh challenges Moses and says, do you really even, if you're going to worship, do you really even know what you're supposed to do when you get there? You know, and well, actually, maybe we don't. But God asks different things of each one of us. And yeah, so it just seems strained, not strange, but strained to me as to what's happening in these last few encounters.
Yeah, Moses is upping the ante, but I think it's in a way, just reading this, it's a good thing that he was brought up as an Egyptian, because as it says here, that Egyptian law said that there were laws treating of provisions for the release of slaves, and it goes back as far as the readings we did a year or so ago about when Jacob is leaving Laban.
Mhm.
The negotiation that goes on
Negotiation of the
there.
cattle. Mhm.
That it's so. This is something that if you're not going to let us take the things that we need to do the worship, you have to then provide. How are we going to do this? So maybe Moses was the right person to be able to mention all of this. He's experienced this not only in Egypt, but also living with the Midianites, because they would have been aware of this too. Any comments? So I think what the rabbi brings up is a very interesting discussion. That could be be another good 1 hour discussion in and of itself. Very good point, Rabbi. Any other discussion? Well, I think looking at our time and everything, rather than going into the next series of discussions, we won't have enough time to complete everything. Unless somebody has any other comments to make at this point, maybe this is a good place to